Masechet Menaḥot Daf Chaf Vav. The Mishnah teaches Nitmeu sheyareha, Nisrefu sheyareha, Avdu sheyareha, Kemidat Rabbi Eliezer Keshera, Uchmidat Rabbi Yoshua Pesula. If one takes a kometz and then before you burn the kometz, the remainder of the flour becomes tameh, or the remainder gets burnt and is gone, or it gets lost and is no longer there. So ideally, we want that at the time of the burning of the kometz, the remainder will be there. And then that is the matir, and then the kohanim can eat it. That's the ideal. But now there's no leftover, so you're burning the kometz to be matir, something that is either tameh, or doesn't exist, or is lost. Is that okay? Machloket. If we follow the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer says regarding an animal offering that if the kohen sprinkles the blood and there's no meat around, nevertheless, it's valid. It fulfills the obligation of the owner. So this is equivalent. The equivalent to sprinkling the blood is burning the kometz. And so just like if there's no meat, it's still valid. So too here, if there's no remainder flour, the korban is still valid. However, if we follow the opinion of Rabbi Yoshua, who says regarding an animal offering that when the kohen does the sprinkling of the blood, there is no meat that's still around, then the whole korban is pasul. So too here he would say that if during the kometz there is no more of the shiyareha, of the leftover flour, then it's invalid. Amarav, vehu shenitmeu kol sheyareha, aval miksat sheyareha lo. Rav says that there's a limitation on the opinion of Rabbi Yoshua. Rabbi Yoshua, let's say we follow him, and we say it's no good. That's only if all of the shirayim became tameh. But if there's some shirayim left, then it's still okay. So you don't need for all of the remainder flour to be tahor, as long as some is tahor, and even if some is tameh, then the kometz will still be valid and the korban will be valid. That's what Rav said. Now, notice that Rav only mentioned the case of tumah. Was he just saying that as an example, but it would apply also to the other two? Well, we're going to try to figure that out. So, kasaka datech nitma'in abud v'saruf la. Our first reading of Rav is he's being precise in his language, and he means that only regarding tum'ah, because you have all of the flour exists in front of you, but some of it is tameh and some of it is tahor. That's okay. So regarding tum'ah, yes, it's okay if only part of it is tahor. However, when it comes to the remainder being lost or burnt, not so. We need all of it to be present, and if even only part of it is lost or burnt, then it will not be good. My kasabar. Now, let's see. What would be the principle that could explain the distinction between these? Ikasabar shiura miletahi afilu abud v'saruf nameh. If he thinks that a part of something is a significant amount, and that would make sense. Why? As long as some of it is tahor, it's still okay. Well, then that principle should apply also to the case where it's lost or burnt. As long as some of it's burnt, but some of it's okay, so some of it should be okay. Or some of it's lost, but some of it's there. Then, if a part of it, a remainder, is significant, then it should be okay in those cases too. And if you say that a remainder is not a thing, you need the whole thing to be there, and that's why you need all of it to be present, and it can't be that some of it was burnt or some of it was lost. Fine. And now regarding the tum'ah, why would that be any different? Oh, because for tum'ah, the seats that the Kohen Gadol is wearing will effectuate acceptance for it. Okay, fine. So that's why that would be different from the others. But if we're relying on the seats, then actually it wouldn't have to be part tahor and part tameh. Even if all of the flour became tameh, the remainder flour that you're supposed to eat, even if it's all tameh, the seats would make it acceptable. And so it wouldn't matter if it's part or whole, or all of it. לעולם כסבר, שיעורה מלטהי, ונטמע הוא הדין, לעבוד ושרוף, הידה כמר נטמע, רשאי הוא נקט. And so therefore, we go back to Rav, and we say, no, it must be Rav thinks that a remainder, we're talking about a remainder of the remainder flour. We're using this shiura, and shiraim is a similar word, but we're using it to apply to two different things. So we're saying after you take the kometz, so you have the leftover of the flour. Now of that, part of it gets lost or burnt or tameh, but part of it is okay. So the part that's okay, that is significant, and therefore the korban is still just fine. And when we say, and even though Rav said the case of tum'ah, that the truth is that law applies also to when it gets lost or burnt. And so why does Rav say nitma? Because he was just taking the first case. He was giving an example of the first case, but it applies to the other cases also. Kedetanya. And we see this is true in a baraita. Rabbi Yehoshua Omer. Kol hazevachim shebatorah shenishtayer mehen kezait basar or kezait cheleb zorek et hadam. Rabbi Yehoshua says regarding all the korbanot in the Torah, as long as there remains a kezait, either of the basar, the edible part of the korban, or cheleb, of the cheleb, the sacrifice part of the korban, that all you need is a kezait, and you can go sprinkle the blood. You can't have nothing if there's no part of the meat and no part of the cheleb, the whole rest of the animal is gone, then you can't sprinkle the blood. But as long as there's a kezait of one or the other, that's okay. Kahasi zait basar kahasi zait cheleb eno zorek et hadam. If you have half a zait of edible part and half a zait of the part that you burn, no, they don't join together. You need one whole kezait of one or the other. Uba'ola afilu kahasi zait basar vekahasi zait cheleb zorek et hadam mipnei shekula kalil. But if it's korban olah, then even if you did shechita, you accepted the blood, you have the blood, and then the rest of the animal, something happened to it, it got lost. Almost all of it, except for half a zait of the basar and half a zait of the cheleb. If it's a korban olah, then you can still go ahead with sprinkling of the blood and it will be valid. Because in the korban olah, both the meat and the cheleb all gets burnt on the mizbeach. So since it's all going to the same place, we can combine it together. But for any other korban that's not a korban olah, there, since they're going to different places, you can't combine a chasi zayit cheleb and a chasi zayit of the basar. Uba mincha afilu kula kayemet lo yizrok. The baraita ends with the statement that regarding korban mincha, even if all of the flour is there, you cannot sprinkle the blood. We wonder, mincha, my abidata. What's a mincha doing here? What? There is no blood in a flour offering. Amara papa minchat nesachim sal kadatach ho'il ubahadeh zebach ka'atya kigufe dezibcha damya kamashmalan. The papa explains we're talking about a korban mincha that comes along with an animal sacrifice, like a shelamim. And let's say you had the shelamim, and you did shechita, you have the blood, and all of the meat, all of the animal gets lost. All you have is the blood. But you also have the flour. You might have thought that since the flour comes along with the animal, therefore, it's like the body of the animal, and as long as you have a kezait of the flour, then you can still sprinkle the blood because you don't have meat, but you have the flour, and it's all part of the same offering. And therefore, this baraita comes to teach not so. The mincha, although it accompanies the sacrifice, it's not actually part of the animal, and therefore it's not good enough. And if you have no meat, no cheleb, and you have the mincha, still you cannot sprinkle the blood of the animal. Menaḥot, what is the source for this halacha? Amar Rabbi Yochanan mishum Rabbi Ishmael umatuba mishum Rabbi Yoshua ben Hananya amar kera v'ktira cheleb l'reich nichoach laHashem cheleb v'afal pi she'en basar. It comes from this pasuk that the kohen will sprinkle the blood against the altar, and he shall make the fat smoke for a pleasing aroma. Notice that it mentions cheleb. It does not mention the meat that would be edible. So you see here, even if you only have the cheleb to burn, l'reich nichoach, that would be burning it to Hashem, as long as you have even just cheleb and no meat, that's okay. Vashkachan cheleb. Yoter to shnei chelayot minalan. Okay, that's if I have a kezait of cheleb, and then I'm good to go. How about other parts of the animal that are also sacrificed on the mizbeach? For example, the yoteret, the lobe of the liver, or the two kidneys. They're also put on the mizbeach. What if I have no meat and I don't have cheleb either, but I have have the kidneys or have the lobe, have a kezait of that? Is that enough that I can still go ahead and sprinkle the blood and it'll be a valid korban? The katane uba mincha afilu kula kayemet lo yizrok. Mincha hu de lo yizrok hayoteret ushtecheliot v'yizrok. Now I know this is the halacha because in the Braita, in that last line that said regarding a mincha, even if it's all there, you cannot sprinkle it. That means that, if there's no korban mincha, you can't sprinkle it. But as long as there's some part of the animal, and that would include at least part of the lobe or some of the two kidneys, then that would be enough. Okay, so we know that is the halacha. So what is the source from the Torah for this halacha? Amin elan. Rabbi Yochanan dideh amar l'reach nichoach. Kol she'ata ma'aleh l'reach nichoach. Rabbi Yochanan himself explained it because from the words l'reach nichoach, that's burnt up as a pleasing aroma. Anything that you burn on the mizbeach for pleasing aroma, that will be sufficient to make it a valid korban. So as long as you have something, a kezait of something that belongs on the mizbeach that's burnt, that's part of the animal, then you can go ahead and sprinkle the blood. Now how come in the pasuk I had to mention both cheleb and reach nechoach? What if I had just one or the other? If it only said cheleb, I would say, you need a kezait of the fat. But if you have these other items, that would not be good enough. So as Yochanan said, reach nechoach comes to teach us that the other parts are also okay. So how about if I just had that, reach nechoach, if I said that, I would have thought even the flour, because the flour, part of it is also burnt on the mizbech, I might have thought that's enough. If I have flour that comes along with the animal offering, and the whole animal is gone, but there's a part of the flour offering that's there and can be burnt on mizbeach, I might have thought that would be sufficient to make it valid. That's why it says cheleb has to be something that is like cheleb, in that it's part of the animal. Next Mishnah, shelo bikli sharet pasul, Rabbi Shimon machshir, hiktir kumsa pa'amayim keshera. Now, the typical procedure is the person brings the owner brings the flour together, mixed with the oil. If it needs oil, whatever it needs, or lebona, he brings it. Then the kohen takes the kometz. After he takes the kometz, it's in his hand. So ideally, he's supposed to put it into a second vessel. Even though it's already sanctified in the first vessel, that's a lower level sanctity. Just it can be eaten by kohanim. Then he puts it in a second vessel. That's a higher level sanctity, so that it can be burnt on the mizbeach. According to Tanakama, if he took the kometz in his hand but did not put it into a second vessel and just put it on the mizbeach, no good. You can't do that. Rabbi Shimon says that's okay. So we'll see what their machloket is about. Now, if he took the kometz and he split it into two parts, and he burnt half now and half later, that's okay. He could do it in multiple increments. Amar Rabbi Yehuda b'red Rabbi Chia, my tama Rabbi Shimon. Now we're going to have three interpretations of Rabbi Shimon by three different Amoraim. The first one is Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Chia. He says, what's the source for Rabbi Shimon? Amar Kera, Kodesh Kadashim hi kahatat ve'cha'asham. Regarding a korban mincha, it says it's holy of holies. It's like a chatat and like an asham. It's true. It's like kodesh kodeshim. It's like these in many ways. And that you burn part of it, the kohanim eat the rest of it. It has to be in the courtyard. So a lot of it is the same. But the question is, why you can just say kodesh kodashim? Why you have to compare it to the chatat and also to an asham? Bale obda biyad kechatat, obda biyamin kechatat, bechli obda bismol ka'asham. And the answer is giving you two options for how to burn the kometz. If you want to do it like in your hand, like a korban chatat, then you can do it with your right hand as you do with the korban chatat. Korban chatat, after you do shechita, you gather the blood into a bowl, then he's going to take it and he's going to dip his right index finger and sprinkle it onto the mizbeach. So actually the blood is going directly from his finger onto the mizbeach, and so just like that you can do with your hand. So too, if you want, you can do the kometz, take it in your hand, and then throw it onto the mizbeach, and that's sufficient. That's like a chatat. Or if you want, option 2, you can do it in a vessel, meaning you take the kometz, put it into a vessel, and then you take the vessel and you pour it from the vessel onto the fire, just like we do for an asham. For an asham, we receive the blood, and then you sprinkle the blood directly from the vessel. And according to the Rabbi Shimon, since you're doing it from the vessel and not directly from your hand, you can use the left hand too. That would be totally fine. ורבי ינאי אמר, כיוון שכמסו מכלי שרת, מעלהו מקטירו, אפילו בהמיינו, ואפילו במקדה של חרס. Rabbi Yanai disagrees. He's even more lenient. And he says that according to Rabbi Shimon, once you took the kometz from the kli sharet, and it's in your hand, good. Then you can go take it up to the mizbeach and burn it in any way you want. You can put it even in your belt, or even in an earthenware vessel that we don't use in the Bet HaMikdash. So you can do it in any way like that. We don't use it as a holy vessel to make something kodesh. So it doesn't matter. You put it in a vessel, an earthenware vessel. Don't put it in a vessel. Put it in your belt. Leave it in your hand, as long as it gets onto the fire in any way. And so he's disagreeing, and he says, by saying that even if you do it in your hand, it doesn't have to be with the right hand. You could do it in any way you want. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak amar hakol modim bekomesh sheta'on kiddush. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says everyone agrees, even Rabbi Shimon, that the kometz requires sanctification in a service vessel. What he does say is that after you put it in the service vessel, then you don't have to leave it in there. So you take the kometz. At that point, you have to put it into a second service vessel. After that, then you can do whatever you want with it and take it up to the mizbeach and burn it. You can do that in your hand. You could do it with a non-service vessel in any other way. But at least that first step of taking the kometz and putting it in the service vessel has to be done according to the Rabbi Shimon. So when Rabbi Shimon says machshir shelo b'kli sharet, he meant just after the initial putting it into that secondary vessel. Now we're going to ask a few questions about these opinions. Me'etibeh, a challenge against Rabbi Yehuda, who said that it has to be with the right hand if you're going to use your hand. There's a braita that teaches, Hekter chalabim ve'abarim ve'asim she'elan ben bayad ben bekli ben biyamin ben besmol kisherin. Regarding the burning of fats and limbs and the wood. If you bring it up to the mizbeach, whether with your hand or in a vessel, with the right or the left, it's okay. Here's the relevant part. Hakometz v'aketoret v'alebona she'alan ben bayad ben bekli ben beyamin ben besmol kesherin tiyub tadribu daberet Rabbi Chia. The kometz, that's the thing we're interested in, and also ketoret and alebona that you bring up to the mizbeach, whether with your hand or in a vessel, with the right or the left hand, it's okay. So this is more lenient than the interpretation of Rabbi Yehuda. He said that if you use your hand, then it has to be with the right. But here it says, no matter what, doesn't matter. You could use right or left. This seems to be a refutation of Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Chia. But we have an answer. Amar lach Rabbi Yehuda b'red Rabbi Chia. Listadin katane. Beyad biyamin. Bikli ben biyamin ben bismol. We can read it as by breaking the sentence into two different parts. As follows. If you do with the right hand, if you do with your hand, biyamin. So bayad, so that's yamin. So the word yamin, you have to put with the word yad. If you can use your hand, it has to be with the right. If bikli, if you can use a vessel, then you can do it with the right or the left. So you have to just add some punctuation to make that clear. Tashema, kemaso shelo mikli sharet, v'kedesho shelo bikli sharet, ve'elo v'ktiro shelo bikli sharet, pasul. Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon machshirin b'matan keli. And now a challenge against Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, who said that even according to Rabbi Shimon, the initial kometz has to be placed in a secondary kli sharet. And then after that, you can do what you want. But this Baraita teaches otherwise. If, according to Tanakama, if one took the kometz not from a service vessel, that's the first service vessel where all the flour is in, and then kiddusho, then he put it, and then he took the kometz, and he did not sanctify it in the secondary service vessel, also no good. And even after that, if he brought it up to the mizbeach and burnt it, not in a service vessel, also it's no good. You have to do everything in a service vessel, including the taking it and bringing it up to the mizbech and then pouring it onto the fire. That's Tanakama. Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon say it's okay regarding matan keli. That sounds like the initial placement of the kometz into the secondary vessel. it's okay. It does not have to be in a service vessel. But Rav Nachman said it has to be in a service vessel. Ema mi matan keli ve'elach. Just change the bet into a mem. It's not in the second service vessel, but rather from the service vessel and forwards. In other words, that the initial kometz has to be certainly from a service vessel. Everyone agrees with that. And then you have to take the kometz and put it into a second service vessel. That also, according to this interpretation, everyone, Rabbi Shimon, would agree with. From Matan Keli, from that point and onwards, or after that, after you put it into the secondary service vessel, then you can take it out and bring it up by hand or in any way you want, up to the Mizbech and put it on the fire. Tashema, another challenge against Rav Nachman. Tashema v'chachamim omerim kometz ta'on keli sharet kesad komso mikli sharet umekadesho bikli sharet uma'alo maktiro bikli sharet. Rabbi Shimon omer kevan shekemaso mikli sharet uma'aleo maktiro shelo bikli sharet vedayo is also found in Tosefta. According to Chachamim, the kometz requires to be in a service vessel. That's a sanctified vessel, that's owned by the Bet HaMikdash. How so? So you take the initial kometz from the first service vessel with all the flour in it, and you sanctify it in the second service vessel, and you have to bring it up also in a service vessel. Good, all three steps. Rabbi Shimon, however, says that once kemaso, you took the kometz from a service vessel, then the rest of it you can just go and take it up to the Mizbeach and burn it, not from a service vessel. So you see that you do not have to place the kometz into a second service vessel. Okay, you have to change the words a little bit and say kevan shekemaso, just add another word here, kiddisho. You did the kometz and you sanctified the kometz in a second service vessel. After that, you can bring it up and burn it without a service vessel, and that would be just fine. Tashema, kamatz bimino v'natan bismolo, yachzir limino. Another braita we're going to bring as a challenge says that if the Kohen took the kometz in his right hand and then transferred the kometz to his left hand, he should put it back in his right hand. Bismolo v'chisheb aleha ben chutz mkomo ben chutz zmano pasul ve'en bo karet. He put it in his left hand, and he thought about it that he is going to have it be consumed, whether outside the place or outside the time. Although it's pasul, there's no karet. The reason there's no karet for pigul, if he thinks about outside the time, is because there's another problem. Something is only liable to karet if pigul is the only problem. Here, it's also in his left hand, and that's why, since there's another problem, it's only pasul. Lishnachrina, another version of what we just said. Chisheb aleha chusim komo pasul ve'en bo karet. Chusim mano pigul v'chayavin alav karet. If he had intention when doing the kometz that he's going to consume it outside of the place, have it burnt outside the place, or in that case, then it's pasul, but there's no karet because that's just outside the place. If he had in mind that it will be consumed outside the time, then it is pigul and one is liable to karet, assuming he did everything else correctly in the right hand. Divrei Rabbi Elazar ve'Rabbi Shimon. That's the opinion of both Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon. Chachamim omrim kevan shenetano lismol pesalatu matenato. Chachamim say once he put it in his left hand, then the whole thing is pasul, no matter what, and you can't put it in your right hand anymore because it has to go from your right hand directly into the service vessel. Now, my ta'ama mishum debai kedusha bikli. Right, the reason why it's pasul is because it has to be sanctified in a vessel. Kevan shenetano lismol nasa kedam shenishpach misavad behema al harispa. And once you put it in your left hand, the Kohen puts it in his left hand, then it's the same as blood that falls on the floor directly from the neck of the animal. And even if you gather it up, it's still pasul. First, you have to collect it in the service vessel of the blood. Then, if the blood falls down, then you can pick it up. But it has to first be sanctified in the service vessel. So too, according to Chachamim, it has to be sanctified in a service vessel immediately. Otherwise, it's no good. Now, we can derive from this. Mikilad Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon, La ba'umatan keli, tiyubta Rab Nachman tiyubta. Since Chachamim say it requires being placed directly into a service vessel, that means, as a contrast with Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Elazar, and they would say it does not have to be placed in a service vessel. And that will be a final refutation of Rab Nachman, who said that even Rabbi Shimon requires that it be placed in a service vessel. After that, then you could take it out and burn it on the Mizbeach. But from here we see that even initially it does not have to be placed into a Kli Sharet. Now this Braita will be a support for Rabbi Yehuda, the son of the Rabbi Chia, because it says that if he puts it in his left hand, he has to put it back in his right hand, and that's what Rabbi Yehuda said, that he has to come and burn it in his right hand. If he's using his hand, he has to use his right hand. If you use a vessel, he could use his left hand. So that's why he has to put it back in his right hand. So it makes sense. But according to the Bianai said that there's no restrictions at all. Once he takes the komets, then it doesn't matter what he does. He could put it in his belt. He could put it into an earthenware vessel. He could put it into his left hand. So why would he have to put it back into his right hand? Rabbi Yomi says, you're right. I cannot reconcile myself with this baraita, but I can reconcile myself with the first baraita that we brought that as a challenge against Rabbi Yehuda. And to answer Rabbi Yehuda, but the son of Rabbi Chia, we say, you have to change the punctuation and say that the right hand is only if you're doing it with the hand, then it has to be the right hand. We took right and we said that's with the hand, and when it says right and left, that's only with the vessel. Okay, you have to change the punctuation, but I'm not going to change the punctuation. I'll just read it straight through. And if you read that baraita straight through, then it is a support for the Bianai. It says that you can take the komets and you can do it with a vessel, with the hand, right hand, with the right, with the left, it doesn't matter. And so even though I cannot reconcile myself with this baraita that you just quoted, but I have a different baraita to back me up, so I'm okay. The Mishnah taught, Hiktir kumsa pa'amayim keshera, if the Kohen burns the komets in 2 shots. He puts half on it now, and then a little bit later he burns the other half. That's okay, it doesn't have to be burnt all at once. Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, פעמיים ולא פעמי פעמיים, ורבי יוחנן אמר פעמיים ואפילו פעמי פעמיים. There's machloket about the Mishnah. The Mishnah says you could do it in 2 shots, but how about more than that? Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi says no, you could burn it twice in 2 portions, but not in more than that. 2 is the max. Rabbi Yochanan, however, says pa'amayim is just an example. You could do it in 2 portions, and even in several portions. That's okay. You could split up into little bits and burn it a little bit at a time. My benaihu. What's at the essence of their controversy? Amar Rabbi Zera, yesh komes pachot mishene zetim, v'yesh haktara pechutam mikazait ika benaihu. Rabbi Zera explains that they're arguing about whether it's significant if you have a kometz that's less than 2 zetim, does it have to be at least 2 kizetim, and whether when you burn, can you burn less than a kizait? Is that considered a significant act or not? Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi sabar en kometz pachot mishene zetim, ve'en haktara pechuta mikazait. Rabbi Yochanan sabar yesh kometz pachot mishene zetim v'yesh haktara pechuta mikazait. Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi says that there is no such thing as a kometz that's less than 2 kizetim. It has to be at least 2 kizetim when you take the initial kometz in your hand. And burning cannot be less than 1 kizait. And therefore, if you have a kometz that's 2 kizetim or more, and you split it in half, then each half will be a kizait, which is considered a significant burning. So that's just fine. But if you split it into 3 parts or 4 parts, then each part will be less than a kizait, and that will not be considered a proper burning. Rabbi Yochanan, however, says you can have a kometz that's less than 2 zetim. It depends on the size of the hand of the kohen. You might have a small hand, and then maybe it'll be less than 2 kezetim. And yet you can split it into 2, so each kezait is going to be each half is going to be less than a kezait. And so therefore we learn that each burning can be less than a kezait. That's still significant, and so therefore you can split up even into little pieces and burn each at a time, and that is valid. Itmar. Kometz me'matay matir shirayim ba'achila. Question. At what point during the burning process of the kometz is the remaining flour permitted? Is it immediately when you put it on the fire? Is it when it's totally burnt? Is it somewhere in the middle? What does it mean? Lehaktir means to make it smoke. to burn it up. So at what point precisely can the Kohanim start eating the remainder of the flour? Rabbi Chanina omer, mi shemashla bo et ha'ur. Rabbi Yochanan amar, mi shetasit bo et ha'ur berubo. Rabbi Chanina says it's relatively early on, once the fire takes hold of the kometz, meaning when it lights on fire, when it ignites. So that's just after a few minutes. Rabbi Yochanan, however, says it's only when the fire consumes the majority of the kometz. So that's already, it will take some time. You have to look, the majority is burnt up. Only then can the Kohanim eat the remainder. Amar le Rav Yehuda le Rabba bar Rav Yitzchak. Az beralach ta'ama de Rabbi Yochanan. Amar kera. V'hine ala kitor ha'aretz ki kitor ha'kibshan. En kibshan ma'ale kitor ad shetasi ta'or berubo. Rav Yehuda said to Rabba, the son of Rav Yitzchak, I'm going to explain to you the reason for Rabbi Yochanan. Why does he think that it has to be mostly burnt up? Well, because the pasuk in Vayikra, we can look at the pasuk inside. It says, והביאה אל בני אהרון הכהנים וקמס משם מלוא כומסו מסוטה ומשמנה על כל לבונתה. The owner of the meal offering will bring it to the Kohen, will take the kometz, והקטיר הכהן את אזכרת המזבח אישרח נכוח לאדוני. והקטיר means he will burn, he will make it smoke upon the mizbeach. Now, what does that mean, to make it smoke? We can learn this actually from a strange place, from Sidom, that says regarding that city, and behold, the smoke of the land went up as smoke of a furnace. So it's comparing the smoke of the city like the smoke of a furnace. Now, when does a furnace release the most smoke? A furnace does not release smoke until the fire takes hold of the majority of the fuel. It starts burning the majority of the fuel. That's when the smoke is the maximum. And therefore, in order to fulfill ketoret, literally burning of the kometz, has to be that the majority is consumed by the fire. Amar le Ravin bar Rav Ada le Rava. Amri talmidecha amar Rav Amram Tanya. Ravin bar Rav Ada says to Rava that your students say in the name of Rav Amram that he quotes the following baraita. En li ela devarim shedarkan likrav balayla kegon evarim ufradim shema'alan umaktiran mibo hashemesh umitakelin veholchin kol halayla kula. This baraita that we're quoting is going to lead to a challenge against Rabbi Yochanan, and it's a commentary on this pasuk here in the beginning of Parashat Tzav that says, tell Aaron and his sons, Zot Torah ta'olahi ha'olal mokedah al mizbeach kol halayla ad haboker ve'esh hamizbeach tukad bo, that the korban olah is going to be burnt on the altar all night until the morning, while the fire on the altar is kept going on it. So we learn from here that there are some things that are burnt at night. You can still burn things during the nighttime. So we learn in this baraita. I only know from here that there are things that you burn in the night. For example, what is burnt in the night? Evarim uferadim. That would be limbs and fats of burnt offerings, that an olah that's entirely burnt. So those can continue to burn all night. That you bring it up and put it on the mizbeach even after sunset. Of course, you can put it during the day. Once you do shechita, you can put it on the mizbeach during the day after you sprinkle the blood. But you don't have to do it during the day. You can put it on at night, and they will be continually consumed throughout the entire night. So that's for sure, because it says here kol halayla. But now also we learned devarim shedarkan likra bayom kegon ha-komes ve'halebona ve'ketoret u'minchat kohanim u'minchat kohen mashuach u'minchat nesachim shemalan maktiran mibo hashemesh. And we learned also that there are items that the usual manner is to burn it during the day. For example, the kometz and the levona and ketoret, right? These you're supposed to put them on during the day. And a korban menaḥot, that where the entire flour is burnt, that's if a kohen brings it, or the kohen gadol, his daily korban mincha, and korban mincha that comes along with animal offerings that are entirely burnt. These things one may bring them and burn them after sunset, right? Now, we interrupt the Braita to say, you just said that the way is to bring it during the day. So how come you're saying now that you can bring it after sunset? Ela im bo hashemesh, shemitakelin v'olchin kol halayla, minayin, Talmud omar zot Torat ha'olah riba. So the Gemara just clarifies in the middle of the Braita that mi bo hashemesh doesn't mean after sunset. It means that you can bring it close to sunset. So you im bo hashemesh, so you can put it on even right before sunset. Even though it's not going to be entirely burnt, it's not even going to be a majority burnt because you put it on just a few minutes before sunset. Okay, now we continue the Braita and it says, how do you know that you can let them continue to burn all night? Because the Pasuk says, Zot Torat ha'olah, and those extra words are inclusive words to tell me that even things that normally are burnt during the day, meaning that you should put them on during the day, it's okay if they continue to burn at night as long as you put them on the Mizbeach before sunset. Okay, that's the Braita. Now here's the question. If you put these the komets and all these other things, if you put them on right before sunset, they're not going to be majority burnt. The fire is not going to consume the majority of it before sunset during the day. And so isn't that a problem? And that would be a challenge against Rabbi Yochanan, because Rabbi Yochanan said that we call something burnt, the komets takes effect only when the majority is burnt. But here, the majority will be burnt only at night. But isn't this something that has to be burnt during the day? Lakashya kan lilkot kan lehatir. And he says, no, there's no challenge. When Rabbi Yochanan said his opinion above, the question actually was, from what time can one eat the leftovers? That's when he said, when it has to be, the majority has to be burnt in order to eat the leftovers. But here we're talking about a different question. When does the altar receive the handful? Meaning, when does it become an acceptable korban? That is immediately, as soon as you put it on, and it just ignites, you put it on, after 1 minute, then it's already considered that the altar, the Mizbeach, received the Korban, it's a valid Korban, and now the rest of the burning can happen afterwards. So even Rabbi Yochanan agrees that in order for it to be an acceptable Korban, that you put there during the day to fulfill that obligation of burning it during the day, that just has to be the beginning of burning. But then you still can't eat the remainder of the flour until the majority is consumed. Rabbi Elazar matni la mi bo hashemesh mokim la bepokin v'chen ki ata Rav Dimi amar Rabbi Yanai befokin. We have a different answer from Rabbi Elazar. He has the words mi bo hashemesh, which we also do. We also have that, right? So that ma'alad maktim mi bo hashemesh. You have to burn it from before sunset. But he says that when it says that you can continue burning at night, it doesn't mean the majority of the burning. The majority of the burning still has to be during the day. And when it says you can burn it at night, it's talking about parts that fly off. Sometimes when you're burning something and it gets very hot, it can fly off the Mizbeach. And the question is, can you put it back on? So the answer is yes, you can put it back on all night. But in fact, it has to be mostly burnt during the day. When the Rav Dimi came from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, he also said the same thing, that this Baraita, when it says that items that should be burned during the day, it means literally they have to be mostly burnt during the day. And when it says they can continue at night, that just means any part that flew off you can return onto the Mizbeach at all night. Omi amar Rabbi Yanai hachi. Now we ask, did Rabbi Yanai really say, this is the name of Rabbi Yanai over here, did he say that you can put something back on all night? Veha amar Rabbi Yanai ketoret shepaka me'al gabei mizbeach afilu keratin sheba en machazirin ota. Rabbi Yanai said, at least regarding the ketoret is one of the items that was listed here, so the other one's okay, but ketoret, regarding that one, which you burn during the day, he said that if it falls off if it falls off the mizbech, we're talking about the mizbech ketoret in the kodesh, even if a small lump of it fell off, you cannot return it to the fire. ותנא רב חנינא בר בן יומי בדבר רבי אליעזר בן יעקב, אשר תאכל האש את העולה על המזבח, היא כולה עולה את המחזיר, והיא את המחזיר היא כולה קטורת. And we have yet another teaching that says that which the fire will consume from the olah on the mizbeach, and we learn from here that things that the parts that are consumed from a korban olah, if it falls off the mizbeach, you can put them back on, but not ketoret. So you see that ketoret cannot be returned to the mizbeach. So how could you tell me that Rabbi Yanai says that this entire braita, including ketoret, is talking about items that fell off that you can put back on? And the answer is, Sememi kan ketoret, erase the word ketoret from this baraita that does not belong there. You can return the other items, but you can't return ketoret onto the mizbeach. Amar Rabbi Aseh, ki pashit Rabbi Elazar b'Menaḥot, ba'eh hachi, ba'eh Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Aseh says that when Rabbi Elazar was teaching this Masechet Menaḥot, he would ask the following question, Kol shesidero, v'sider alav et hamaracha mahu, derech haktara bechach, or en derech haktara bechach, tekom. If you take the komets of flour and you arrange it directly on the top of the mizbeach, and then you put the wood arrangement on top of it. Normally, you put the wood and then you put the flour on top of the wood. But what if you do it the other way around? It will still get burnt, but it's just opposite of the usual order. Is this a way of burning or not? And we leave this question standing. Chizkiah asks a similar question regarding limbs. Normally, you make the fire, you put the fire on, and then on top of you put the fire on the mizbech, and then you put the meat on top of the wood. But what if you do the opposite? You take the limbs and you put them directly on top of the mizbech, and then you put the arrangement of wood on top of the meat. Mahu al ha'esim amar Rachamana davka al ha'esim odir makevan dichtib kera charina asher tochal ha'esh et ha'olah al ha'mizbeach ibay ha'chiyavid teko. Do we say that when it says al ha'etzim that you have to put the pieces, the head, the fat on the wood? So that means literally on the wood, and you can't be under the wood? Or do we say, based on a different pasuk that says that the fire will consume the olah on the mizbeach? So if you just take those words, olah al mizbeach, you see that olah can be, that's the limbs of the olah, as directly on the altar, on the roof of the altar. And then, so that's okay. And so you could do it this way, or you could do it that way. Or does it have to be precisely one way? So we leave this question also unanswered. What if you take the limbs and you put them next to the arrangement of wood, right nearby? It still might be very hot and it could get burnt, even if it's right next door to it. So how about that? Does one have to be on top of the other, or can you put it side by side? According to the opinion that says the word al means literally upon, this is discussed elsewhere when we're talking about the levona that goes with lechem apanim. That levona, where do you put it? Do you have to put it literally on top of the shulchan, on top of the lechem, or can it be right next to the lechem on the shulchan? And so one opinion says al means literally has to be on top. Well, if that has to be on top, then here also you'd have to say that the limbs have to be on top of the wood, on top, underneath, but one on top of the other, but not next to. The al ha'esim ketib, because the pasuk says al ha'esim, so it means literally on top. So it sounds like the limbs have to be on top of the wood and not side by side. So that's for sure. Al besamuch mai, but there's another opinion that says the word al can mean next to. We actually see that the word alav means next to in this pasuk here, where it's talking about the arrangement of the camp. Ve'alav mateh menashe. So it doesn't mean that the tribe of Menashe is on top of the previous of Ephraim. They're not on top of each other, but rather next to him. And so clearly, alav can mean next to. And if you say that, we can use that definition also regarding korbanot. So how about, what do we say over here? Hachanameh al besamuch. So here also can mean next to and is permitted. Or dilma al he'etzim dumya al mizbech matam al mamash avkan nameh al mamash teko. Or do we have to interpret, since it says the word al ha'etzim and it also says al hamizbeach. Now al hamizbeach, nobody would say that you could put some limbs next to the mizbeach. That would be sufficient. Obviously, that has to be on top of the mizbeach. And therefore, in context, we have to say that al ha'etzim means literally on the wood and not next to the wood. So should we interpret it that way? Or maybe not. Maybe al can mean next to teko. We also leave that question standing. Baruch Adonai le'olam. Amen ve'amen.